Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Fedor Sazanovets and I'm a senior .NET developer. This video is part of a series about solid principles and how to implement them in C# and .NET. Solid principles is something that every object-oriented programmer absolutely needs to know. And in these videos I will show you how to implement them in .NET and C#. For those of you who don't know what solid principles are, SOLID is an acronym. It stands for Single Responsibility Principle, Open-Closed Principle, Liskov Substitution Principle, Interface Segregation Principle, and Dependency Inversion Principle. In today's video, we will talk about Dependency Inversion Principle. So, in our previous videos, we have created an application that reads text from a specified file, converts it into HTML format from MD format, and then saves it in a separate HTML file. We have a file processor class, which implements iFileProcessor interface. This class reads text from a file and writes text into a file. Also, we have text processor class, which implements iTextProcessor interface. This class splits the input text into separate paragraphs and applies opening and closing HTML paragraph tags to each paragraph. And also we have MDTextProcessor class, which inherits from TextProcessor class and implements iMDTextProcessor interface. This class, with the help of a dictionary, looks for various MD-specific tags and converts them into HTML opening and closing tags. Until now, all of these classes were launched from the entry point of the program class. But now we have created a new class, Text Conversion Coordinator, which coordinates all the work between the classes. This class contains only a single method, convertText, which returns conversion status object. File processor and MDTextProcessor are low-level dependencies for this class. And this logic kind of works, but in this case, it's next to impossible to write unit tests for this method. If we have a look inside File Processor class, then we will see that this class reads the content of a real file from a real file system and saves the content into real file. Unit tests must be testing only a single method and nothing else. But in our case, if we write unit tests for this method, instead of just testing the code inside of this method, we will also be testing whether files are properly read and written into. First of all, it's a different type of test. And secondly, to even launch this test, we have to have a properly configured file system. But unit tests are not supposed to depend on file system and folder structure. Plus, if we have a look inside of the logic of this method, then we'll realize that this method itself doesn't even care how exactly files are read and how the text is converted. All that our method is concerned about is that the text is successfully read from the file, and that the text is changed after we have converted it. And to achieve all of this, all that we need to know is what the methods on the dependencies look like, what their signatures are. And this is precisely why we will change classes in our dependencies to interfaces. In this case, we can still use any classes that implement those interfaces as parameters. But now we can easily write unit tests for our method. In our case, we are using XUnit and the mock framework. We are turning our interfaces into temporary implementations. And we are telling our implementations what kind of data they should return, so we can test every single scenario we can think of. For example, we can check what status this method will return if the text that we read from the file is different from processed text. Likewise, we can check if the status is correct, if the system hasn't detected any changes between input text and output text. Likewise, we can check whether our system is working correctly if any of our dependency methods is throwing an exception. But the ability to write unit tests is not the only reason why you should be using dependency inversion principle. For example, in our case, when we were implementing iFile processor interface, we are working with a file system. But likewise, we can create a different class, and this class will contain identical methods. But in this case, it will be working with files on a cloud storage. After all, it doesn't make any difference at all to our coordinator class where does the input text come from and where does it go afterwards.